Good morning, Kevin. Thank you for being here today. I was hoping you could tell me a little bit about who you are and in what capacity you are a leader.
Thank you. Welcome. Glad to be here. My name is Kevin Edwards Cahill. I'm the Executive Director and President of the W. Edwards Deming Institute. And in my capacity as a leader, I run the organization and responsible for the success of the organization. That's what I currently do. In the past, I've started my own business software company and also took that to the point where it was sold and successfully, and then moved on and took this role with the Deming Institute.
Great, thank you. As a leader, what would you say are the three most important qualities or attributes that a leader should have?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say that, before I get into the three things, really the job of the leader from my perspective is to accomplish the transformation of the organization. That leader possesses the knowledge, personality, and persuasive power to do so. But to do that, the three elements that individual needs is, I think, first, the individual has to have a theory and understand why this transformation that I'm talking about would bring gains to the organization and to all the people that the organization deals with. And that includes the customer, that includes the supplier, that includes the individual that you're working with. Second, the individual needs to or does feel that compelled to accomplish this type of a transformation. And it's as an obligation to yourself. It's an obligation to yourself and to the organization. And I think third, which is really, really critical, is that the individual, the leader, has to be practical. And when I say practical, I mean that you can't just say, I'm going to go ahead and do this. They have to have a plan, step by step, and they have to be able to explain it in terms that everybody can understand, whether it's their board of directors, whether it's the employees, whether it's the customers. It's not enough that they have this plan in their own mind. They must be able to convince and change enough people in power within the organization to actually make this plan happen. So they have to have persuasive power. They have to understand people and be willing to use that persuasive power.
Great, thank you. And then can you share what are some of the most important decisions that you make as a leader for your organization?
I would say the most important thing that I do is not focusing on the people. It is focusing on the optimization of the system. And when I say optimization of the system, I mean, how can we make the system more effective, efficient, and productive so the people within it are able to be more effective, efficient, and productive? I think in short, I believe that's probably the most important thing that I can do as a leader. That and being very, very clear, as I mentioned earlier, in terms of explaining something, operationally defining and making sure that's clear throughout the organization. When you ask somebody to do something, you have to completely understand what it is you're asking them to do, and they need to understand that also.
Great. So what do you consider your biggest failure or mistake during your leadership experience?
Yeah. I always find that an interesting question. There's so many of them, and I think one of the great things about failing is that if you have an understanding and you have theory, you can learn from those failures and come back and actually succeed. I would say one of the biggest failures I had, and I came to realize this when I started my own organization, my own business, was that the people in the organization did not clearly understand what the aim of the business was and by what method we were going to accomplish that. And so what we did was, in real quick, at one point, we sat around, there was about 12 of us. We sat around the table and we were struggling mightily as a startup. And I asked everybody, do you understand what the aim of the company is? Well, I'm Dr. Deming's grandson, so I'm guessing they all understand it. But the fact that I'm guessing was a big mistake. I had them all write down what the aim was. And when they all turned it in, they all had a different understanding of what the aim of the organization was. So they were all working hard and giving their best efforts toward a different aim. And that was, I think, one of the biggest failures I had, was not having everybody understand that that is the case. This is the aim, and then explaining by what method that they have to do that. I've gone around the world with a number of different people, board members. We've asked companies all over the world this exact same question, and without any variation, almost all of them, I can't think of one where everybody came up with, or even came close to having the same aim, understanding of the aim. So the fact that everybody's working hard and giving their best efforts toward a different aim is a huge failure on my part. And I think it's a problem with leaders.
Wow, that's, yeah, incredible. I can definitely see where that would happen. And I think something that we don't consider as leaders. So thank you for sharing
We
that.
don't. We
Yeah.
don't. Yeah.
Okay. What would you say is the biggest challenge facing organizational leaders today?
I would say, let me think about that for a second.
Grace?
I would say that do the organization, because what happens with organization as leaders is people blame, the plight that the organization is facing on the leaders, and they may be correct. But I would say is, do the leaders possess the requisite knowledge to bring about improvement to the organization? And, when I'm saying that, I guess, that they think the challenge is, well, how do we make more money? All right. And I look at it as, if you have the requisite knowledge for improvement, then you have the ability to actually transform that organization. And best efforts and hard work don't bring about improvement. Best efforts and hard work, as my grandfather said, not guided by new knowledge, only dig you deeper into the pit you're already in. You need to have knowledge that will enable you to bring about the change that's necessary for the organization to survive and thrive in the future.
Great, thank you. And then my last question for you, Kevin. What piece of advice would you give someone stepping into a leadership position for the first time? So maybe if you were talking to yourself, 20 years ago, when you first started, what would you have, said to yourself, knowing what you know now?
I think without question, from what I have seen and experienced myself, is that you have to be willing to transform the organization from the present state and prepare the organization for the future, not the past. I think one of the challenges is leaders come in and they look at the organization and say, well, it's already, let's pretend it's doing well. And if it's doing well, why should I change it? Because the challenge is understanding that the fact that the organization is doing well right now does not mean that it's going to be successful in the future. Okay, the leader has to be willing to predict the future, to understand the needs of their customer, and to be willing to make the changes necessary to accommodate the needs of that customer and predict the future needs of the customer. And I always look at, like, Steve Jobs, when he came out with the first iPhone. Nobody knew they needed an iPhone. We had these razors. Nobody knew we needed an iPad. And my grandfather talks about the fact that automobiles came. Well, the horses were working great. People have to predict the needs of their customer so that they can be willing to change and survive and thrive. Because Otherwise, what you're doing is you're working within an organization that's prepared for today, which is okay, but you need to be prepared for the future. And to do that, you're going to have to change. The inputs into your system are going to change, like COVID changed everything, which means your process is going to have to change to get the outputs desired that you want and undesirable that you don't need, that you mitigate those.
Thank you so much. That is so insightful, and your expertise and experience really offers a lot of value. So thank you so much for your time this morning,
My
and
pleasure.
hope to be able to chat with you a little bit more about, all of your experience and yeah, anything else that you would. I know that you have a lot to offer, so I appreciate your time, Kevin.
Anytime. My pleasure.